Hi, welcome back to our series, Lessons Learned in Captivity. Now today we're going to talk about a guy who was held in captivity, didn't deserve it at all, which I kind of feel like that I don't deserve this one either, but this man was held in captivity, didn't deserve it at all, but only for one night. You know, that first guy, Noah, was held for 1 year on a floating zoo. Then we had Moses for 40 years on the backside of the desert. Then we had the 4 lepers for who knows how long, held in captivity outside of their city, away from their friends and family. But now we come to a guy that was only held for 1 night. But there is a little bit of bad news. His companions for that night were lions. You know, it's kind of amusing to me as I look back through these stories. God seems to like to quarantine people with animals. Quarantine Noah with a boat full. He quarantined Moses on the backside of the desert with a bunch of sheep. And now he's quarantined Daniel with the lions. So let's talk a little bit about lessons learned in captivity from the story of Daniel. The number 1 lesson is captivity does not care who you are. You know, Daniel was called a president. That was his title. And serving underneath him was 120 princes. But it didn't matter. You see, captivity and quarantine doesn't care. It doesn't matter what your title is. It doesn't matter what your position is. It's going to come into your life. Everybody needs to understand that. The Bible tells us that it rains on the just and the unjust. Remember, the same storm came against the man who had built his life on a foundation of sand and the one who had built it on a solid rock. So maybe this is the thought we need to take away from Daniel's time in captivity. Quit trying to build your fame and worry about building your foundation. You see, the foundation is what keeps you. Fame, that doesn't keep you. The same storm, the same quarantine, the same captivity can come against the famous person or the non-famous person. But what matters during that time is, what is your foundation? So once again, quit worrying about your fame and start worrying about your foundation. The number 2 lesson we learned from this time of Daniel's in captivity is, don't make them take you on, make them take on your God. What am I talking about? When these men conspired to get Daniel, they could not find anything to get him on in his personal life. They looked everywhere, but his reputation was so strong that they said, you know what? If we're going to get him, we're going to have to get him on his relationship with God. I want that to be my testimony. I want people to look at my life and say, you know what? There's no way we can bring her down based on what she does in life and what she says and how she acts. But we're going to have to try to destroy her relationship with God. You know, sometimes in this time of quarantine, this is a good time for you to work on that relationship. Strengthen that bond between you and God. This is a great time to cull some things out of your life, to cut away some things maybe that are damaging your reputation. Maybe some of the things you post on social media, maybe some of the things you're watching or listening to or reading. Maybe this is a good time to fast some of those things. You're not out working a job. This is a good time to look at your reputation and say, is my reputation like Daniel's, to where no one could come against me because of it? They would have to take on my God. You see, the lessons learned in captivity from Daniel, the reason he was forced into captivity was not because of his reputation, but because of his relationship with God. And when you're forced into captivity and you still have a relationship with him, you're going to be okay. The number 3 lesson we learned from Daniel during this time of captivity is, do what's right, even if it costs you. You know, Daniel, he went in when he heard that decree and he knew he wasn't supposed to pray. He went in and he opened those windows and he did what he was supposed to do. You know what's unique is, he didn't go, well, I've heard that rule, now I'm going to go flaunt that rule. That wasn't what he did. He did not try to come against the government that had been established that day and flaunt it. He just did what he had always done before. And he went in there. I want to challenge you, make right decisions at this time. Do what's right, no matter if it costs you a little bit. I know it's costing us a little bit to not have service, but we know it's the right thing to do. We're submitting ourselves to the authority of the land. I know it may cost you a little bit to let go of some things in your life, but if you're doing the right thing and it costs you, I promise you, you are going to be okay. Don't allow your captivity to destroy your convictions. Just remember, your convictions and what you believe and how you live needs to be just as important. Do what's right in captivity as much as you would do what's right when you're not in captivity. I'm not going to allow this time of captivity to destroy the convictions that I've built over my life, and I'm going to continue to do what's right no matter what. Number 4 lesson we learn from the life of Daniel is shut your mouth so he can shut their mouth. You know, you never read in that story of Daniel when he was being led to that moment of captivity that he ever hollered or screamed or fought or rebuked or cursed or reviled. He never did any of that. He simply allowed him to lead him there and throw him into it. And I believe because Daniel kept his mouth shut, the Lord was able to shut the mouths of that lion. One of my favorite cartoons, if you would to say it, of Daniel in the lion's den is Daniel sleeping on the lion, curled up, using the lion as a pillow and the lion as a footstool. You know, I believe that's what God wants to do. In the moment of your captivity, he will take the adversity that's coming against you and he will actually shut it down. One of my favorite books to read is Sister Nona Freeman's books about their time serving as missionaries in Africa. And some of the most amazing things was they would have witch doctors and shamans that would come against the church. And it was almost as if whatever they would pray against the church would come back on them. They would come and they would stand in front of the little churches there in Africa that were preaching the truth. And they would say, we command that this building be burned with fire. And before they could get back to their home had caught on fire. I'm going to tell you what, when you shut your mouth, then the Lord can shut the mouth of the enemy and what he would speak to you. I want you to know that he is still Christ in the middle of the crisis. He is still the God that will close the mouth of the enemy even in the midst of a crisis. So let me challenge you right now. It's okay. Just keep your mouth shut and let him shut the mouth of those around you. And the number 5 lesson we learned from Daniel is probably my favorite. When you do what's right, God will be glorified. You know, Daniel, he kept his mouth shut. He let God shut the mouth of his enemies. And when the king lifted him up out of that pit with those lions, he said, you know what? There's no God like Daniel's God. Daniel's God is the greater. And God got glory through that time of captivity of Daniel. I want to challenge you by doing what's right, by following the lessons learned here in Daniel's life at his time in captivity. God can receive the glory. God can receive the honor through this whole thing. I believe that he is. I see the name of God. I see services online. I see the glory that God is receiving even during this time of captivity. So I want to challenge you, learn that lesson. Let God receive the glory during this time. Let his name be glorified. We're all going to be the better for learning that lesson that Daniel learned in captivity. So just remember that the way you go through your captivity will determine the glory your God receives. And make every effort to do what's right now so that his name will be glorified. So thank you for joining me for this lesson number 4 in our series, Lessons Learned in Captivity. I know God has more things to show us, and I'll see you next time.